All right, guys, welcome in, and we are back with Extra Point with Phil Jones.
All right, guys, welcome in. It's another week. It's another week of talking high school football. Thanks so much for being with us on this Monday. We are once again broadcasting live, or streaming live, I should say, from Miller Mushroom here in Valdosta. You can probably see behind me the waitresses and the staff here going at it back and forth. Got a pretty good crowd coming in for the dinner hour, and hopefully somebody will stop by and join us. But we are thankful that you guys are with us on this Monday. Of course, now for, I guess, the past 3-4 weeks, you see the gentleman in addition to me on your screen. It is the CEO of ITG Next, Mark Dykes, joining me. Mark, thanks so much for being with me again.
Yeah, hey, Phil, nice to be here. Just wondering, are you trying all different kind of pizzas, or are you sticking to one?
Man, I am a true and loyal all meat kind of guy. I like the meatza, they call it.
Okay, all right.
The carnivore type of pizza. So anyway, yeah, that's what I'm going with again today. And by the way, big thanks to our friends here at Mellow Mushroom for not only hosting us here on the show, but obviously feeding us and taking care of us and keeping me with enough soda to wet my whistle during the show.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it, Phil. Phil, you live on soda, man, but it's working for you, though.
It is a bad habit, I agree. But we're thankful to Pepsi. We're thankful, obviously, to Dr. Kevin Collins, sponsors of the show. Big thanks to them. I want to give them a shout out. So, and guys, again, you know the rules. We want to hear from y'all. Let us hear your comments. Let us know where you're checking out the show from and what team you are a fan of and whatever's on your mind. Join in the conversation, the topics that we're going to be talking about here tonight. Well, Mark, I guess right off the top, we're going to talk about, and by the way, just so you guys don't know, what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to start off talking about the transfer situation. We're going to pick up some final thoughts and just last-minute thoughts and comments on that. That obviously got a lot of traction these last couple of weeks since yours truly posted that. Really was not expecting the engagement that we got. Thankful for it, obviously. And Mark, you and I'll get into this, and we encourage you guys to give us your comments and questions, thoughts, and then we'll move on to our quarterback situation. This is another topic that I came up with. We always hear about the North Georgia quarterbacks. You've always got the Metro Atlanta quarterbacks and making a lot of noise. But it just dawned on me that this year, going into the 25 season, guys, we've got a lot of high-caliber quarterbacks in Southern Georgia. And I think as a group, more so than we've ever had. So I came up with our top 10. Big thanks to Clint for posting that beautiful graphic. And I want to thank all you guys. Boy, y'all had a lot of opinions. Your opinions still coming in. We encourage you guys to like and share that page. And, again, give us your comments on the top 10 quarterbacks. I do want to add something to that. We'll be talking about that when we get to it. And then also, Mark has got a pretty interesting comment. A subject that he wants to talk about, and he just brought it up earlier today, and I thought this is pretty good. This is for everybody, no matter what sport you like. Okay, but anyway, that's where we're going to go today. So first and foremost, Mark, this transfer situation, like I mentioned, got a lot of traction, got a lot of people talking about it. Kind of blew me away, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know we talked about a lot of different angles with regarding transfers. Again, I do applaud the GHSA for taking action to try to get a hold on this transfer situation. I think the biggest thing is if you can prevent someone from just transferring multiple times. I know one thing that we didn't think about, or I didn't really think about, and I've since last week's show, I've had the opportunity to speak with some coaches. The coaches I spoke to seem to feel like there's still going to be some transferring going on. That'll be there no matter what. I do think this will help. But the other thing that we didn't talk about is if you sign over legal guardianship of your child, of your son, to someone, then basically anybody could be their legal guardian. I know we didn't talk about that, and that's really a simple process. You don't have to go before a court to do that. Let's say I live in town X, and I want my son to go play in town Y, and either I have a cousin that lives there, whatever it may be, I can get a file and have sign over guardianship to my child for that individual, and then they're the legal guardian. That's where the child will be living and then can play in that area. I know that sounds extreme, but I know we've seen that in the past. I think that's another angle to this thing. But again, I do think it'll be effective. I do think it'll help. Again, I know that's extreme, but I've seen that personally in several situations.
Yeah, and you're right, Mark. That's something that I didn't really consider, and I think really here's the way I'm looking at this. The GHSA pretty much posted the rules, the new rules, and I think that's going to serve as a guide. And then, but you're going to have just like the situation, the scenario, Mark, that you've thrown out there. I think there's going to be many of the dozens of those, what I call exception situations. And obviously, people are going to have to file for, whether it's a hardship, right. Which I think is hardship is kind of a misnomer. It really applies to anything, any kind of exception that falls outside the regular rules or guidelines. And obviously, you're going to have a lot of those. Dr. Robin Hines, by the way, I mentioned this last week, Mark. Robin Hines chimed in and pretty much said the same thing. Trying to kind of appease people and say, look, GHSA, wants to make it work. They're going to be obviously listening to every particular case. So, but that's a good one. That's one I didn't really consider. And Mark, I guarantee you, there's a couple more, several more actually, that we probably aren't thinking of that's going to come up.
For sure. Again, I think it'll meet the objective. I think it's going to slow things down. But we live in a world today where sports is changing so quickly, and it's impacting the high school level. It's really even impacting, you get down to middle school or Pop Warner. I mean, kids are getting trained at such a high level. We talked about that a little bit as well. These freshman quarterbacks being able to come in and make an immediate impact. And the reason they're getting this high quality training at a very young age and are able to jump in and to get started. So I do think you're going to see some of that. You mentioned exceptions. I think the GHSA is probably going to get flooded with a few of those. Certainly, once this thing kicks in, obviously, it doesn't take effect this year, correct, Phil? This is next year.
That's right.
They'll begin to enforce these rules.
Yeah, that's right. 2026 season.
Yeah. So very interesting. Boy, we live in an ever-changing world. I know, Phil, since you and I have been, this is year 18 that we've been around. You go back a little further than that, really, with high school sports. I've always been a big fan, but for 18 years, we've been very close to high school athletics and football. And I don't know that we could have predicted the change that's happened in the last 3-4 years. And it just seems like it keeps moving. It keeps going on and on.
Well, look, Mark, here's the thing about this transfer situation. There's no doubt that, again, you can just look at the reaction that we got. Mark, I think the last time I looked at it, we had, I think the numbers were pretty even. 1,500 likes and shares of that story. It may even be more. You do a pretty good job of keeping updated with our analytics. And, so I don't know, but it definitely is one of the more engaged stories we've had in a while. And that just shows the passion, the interest that people have in that subject, Mark.
It just reminds me, I'm sitting here thinking when my oldest son played football, we were actually living in Macon when he first started, and we were playing in the main league downtown, and they would do a draft of the players. And these coaches would show up. Now, look, these are 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. These coaches would show up with video cameras to video these kids, then to go back and figure out, hey, who do we need to draft? it's crazy, and it's even now over and above that. The way that people have bought in, and sports now, it's big money now, and that's even found its way at the high school level. So I don't think it's gonna end. I do think it's something in us that, look, I'll admit it. If I was a coach, I want to try to have the best team I can, but I want to play within the rules. I want to do it. I'm not going to break the rules to put together the best team. So I certainly wouldn't turn down a very good transfer. Let me put it that way.
I got you. Now let's think about that. We'll kind of close with this. And again, guys, if y'all got a comment or two you want to add as we close out this subject and move on to another one. But my thing is, Mark, this has obviously been a very heated subject, but somebody up the line, okay, probably got burned by this rule. And the only reason I'm saying that, because, this transfer issue has kind of been meddling along, within the GHSA. Now, and granted, we did have a change in the executive director, Robin Hines. And look, he always was very, matter of fact about the situation. They always did their due diligence. Robin Hines always said, though, look, I can't remember the exact number of transfers, but there's a large number of transfers every year. My point being, to enforce those rules under the previous guidelines, it was very tough, Mark. GHSA was basically outmanned. So I think they realized that, hey, we're going to have to put some deeper teeth in this thing, for lack of a better word, because we just don't have the manpower. And when I say we, as GHSA, just don't have the manpower to go out and physically check and confirm all of the moves to ensure it's a bona fide move.
Well, you're correct. It's kind of funny, though, and he also mentioned, I believe, that the majority of the time there's only a handful of transfers that they have to look into the most, or that people report. Like, there may be thousands of transfers, but there's only a handful that, quote, get turned in or need to be verified. Of course, and we all know why that is. Those will be the higher profile ones, primarily in football, where someone can go and make an immediate impact. And certainly when you see kids in mass move, you got 3 or 4 kids moving into one school.
Yeah.
But I think that'll be an ongoing thing. But I did want to hit on, I do think you'll even see some people sign over legal guardianship of their child to a relative, family member, whatever it may be. So that'll pave the way for them to really play, wherever.
Absolutely. So something obviously to keep an eye on there as we move forward. So, all right. Speaking of moving forward, we're going to move to our next topic of conversation. I do want to take a moment before we move into our next topic to kind of address some of our viewers, Mark. We got, of course, as always, Obadiah Farley from Thomas County Central is checking out the show. You know what, Mark? I can always count on Obadiah Farley being front and center. He is a very loyal viewer. He's a fan of TCC. He's Thomas County Central's #1 fan. And just want to give a big shout out and thanks and salute Obadiah Farley for checking out the show.
Well, he's got a lot to be excited about being a fan of TCC. Trust me, wow. They're on the come up. I already won a state championship a couple of years ago. I got a feeling there's more in the future at Thomas County Central.
There's a couple of teams. I say a handful, Mark, that as you know, I've been working on the 2025 football previews, where we're going to be putting those out for a large number of teams. And I got to be honest with you, there's a couple of teams, a few teams, Mark, that they're going to be very, very tough to beat. Now, of course, I probably know secret that one of the teams, because we kind of teased it here, is Thomas County Central. They lost some good players, but Mark, they are just bringing back so much talent. And there's a handful of teams like that, but we may catch on to talk about a little bit of that as if time allows toward the end of the show. But I just wanted to mention that with football season right around the corner, Thomas County Central is going to be one of the teams to watch for sure.
No question about it.
Yeah. All right, we got Andrew Watkins checking out the show. Andrew says, "What's up, Phil? Go Darty. Darty in the house. Love it." Jeffrey Rowland said, "You think it was hot today? Kick it up 20 degrees because the Demons just walked into ITG." I love it. Luke Nelson, a.k.a. Big Buford, is in the house. Well, I tell you, my buddy Luke Nelson, his son plays big linebacker for Buford. Boy, they have got a lot to be looking forward to with that brand new stadium, a great team coming in, Mark. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Buford's a great place. Really been up there multiple times and met all those guys. They're first-class people. They do a great job at Buford.
Absolutely. All right, we got mentioned Obadiah Farley. Obadiah's got a question here. Speaking of transfers, Phil, why do you think Bryce Puckett transferred to Brooks County? Well, now, there's been a lot of speculation about this. Bryce Puckett is the young man who went from Cairo to Thomas County Central. I'm sorry, to Brooks County. My apologies. But I can tell you exactly why. Bryce Puckett's dad put out a statement, for lack of a better word, that said, look, there's been a lot of speculation about why my son Bryce transferred from Cairo to Brooks County, and it was pretty simple. They have a daughter that's going to be going to Valdosta State University, Mark. And it's obviously with the family wanting to make sure that they can visit her and for her to be able to, I guess, drive back and forth. It's a lot easier to go from Whitman to Valdosta, just a 15-minute drive down 84, than it is to go from Cairo to Valdosta. So that's what Mr. Puckett said, gave the reason for Bryce transferring to Brooks County. So I don't think there's really any quarterback controversy there, Mark.
Well, that's what Brooks County needed, right? It's another good player. They're loaded over there.
Well, Mark, and listen, and this is the next topic we're going to move into. We just released the top 10 quarterbacks for South Georgia. How about Brooks County having 2 on the top 10 list?
That's crazy. We talked about it. They're loaded, obviously at that position, at wide receiver, skill position as well. I know they have a bad taste in their mouth. They didn't quite get the job done last year, but do not sleep on Brooks County for this year.
Junior Burris and Bryce Puckett going to be battling it out for the starting. Of course, you got Junior Burris, who led Brooks County to the state championship game appearance. He obviously has done a heck of a job. And now you got Bryce Puckett coming in, already receiving a lot of attention from colleges, even though he's truly has not been a starter yet for anybody. Just goes to show you how high, obviously, the college recruiters are on him. So, again, we'll talk a little bit more about him in just a little bit. But Robert Tallert, go Peach County Trojans, and Coach Westbrook. Coach Maurice Westbrook, Mark, responsible for a lot of that success at Warner Robins, rather. And he's now doing the same thing over at Fort Valley with Peach County.
Great coach. You're exactly right. Gosh, at Warner Robins, I think he was played for it or finally won it there, but was in the finals a number of years in a row. But he did an outstanding job.
Evan Reese tells us, and this must have just broke. Phil, have you heard the news about GHSA voting to approve the new playoff seeding? I knew that was in the talks, but that's something that obviously I've got to check into as soon as the show's over and look and see. I know that they were talking about that, and that's another thing that a lot of people has been at the top of a lot of people's list, Mark. Trying to get the playoff seeding to where, you want to try to avoid a situation like what we had last year in Class 5A when you got Lee County and Milton. Basically, what was thought to be the top 2 teams in the state still remaining in the playoffs, facing off against each other in the semifinals instead of the state title game. And hopefully this new playoff seeding is going to alleviate some of that.
Well, I don't know. Last year, the way Milton played, I don't think it wouldn't have mattered how they seeded it. I mean, Milton's that's one of the best high school football teams I've seen.
No doubt. Mark, how long do you think we've got to the start of football season? If you had to guess, what do you think?
You mean how many days?
Yeah, come on, give me an answer. Don't add it up in your head now. What do you think?
Oh, I'm trying. Well, I had to add it up in my head. Then I'm going to say 45 days, 50 days.
50 days, you got it. 53 days. Rosser Sutherland, hello from Marietta. 53 days until kickoff at Gainesville. You know, Mark, we've been talking about some of these top season openers, and boy, that's another good one. Marietta going to Gainesville. Cameron Duke, of course, come up to Marietta from Edgewater in Orlando, Mark, and you can already tell that Marietta much improved. They're excited about Coach Duke. I know that our guy Flint went up there and spent some time with Coach Duke in Marietta, and Rosser Sutherland. It sounds like the folks in Marietta want to get back to their ways of state championship days from, 2019. All right, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say no question. I'm trying to think when they won. When was that? 2019 is the last time they won?
I believe it was 2019 that Marietta won the state championship. They had the big tight end. I think his name was Gilbert. Eric Gilbert. And
That's
of course,
right.
Yeah, they of course have not been quite the team that not nearly the team that they were. Richard Morgan, longtime coach there of the Blue Devils, of course, stepped aside. So we wish Cameron Duke the best of luck. Brooks Carter checking in from Baker County. Prayers to Southwest Georgia Academy, losing an upcoming 7th grader JV player last night. Our thoughts and prayers go out to that young man and his family. Always hate to hear about that. That is terrible. Jamie Fraley Seeger, big fan of the show. I'm a big fan of Jamie, and she is Camden County's #1 fan, checking in. Dietrich and Andrews, what's up, Phil? Thomasville Bulldogs in the house. Woof, woof, woof. That's going to be something, Mark. We were talking about Thomas County Central earlier. Thomasville's very improved. Of course, we've got them as one of the top 3 teams in their classification. We know Thomas County Central is going to be right back near the top in 5A. We talked a little bit about this last week, Mark. That's a good thing, seeing football alive and well across the board in Thomasville, the city of Thomasville.
Great city for football. Thomasville, Thomas County Central, great rivalry, a lot of history there. For sure, glad to see that. And there are different classifications, but that's a great rivalry. You can throw classifications out the window. You can throw records out the window in that game. Anything could happen. And speaking of anything can happen, Phil, I know you created the top 10 quarterbacks in South Georgia.
Yes.
So I'm sure that you probably have had to answer some questions about that. Were those in any particular order, Phil, on that list?
Mark, I'm glad.
I put you on the spot with that, right?
I figured you would.
Yeah.
Listen, no, the truth is, I'm glad you asked me about that, because the truth is they were not in order. But you can't tell that to the folks who looked at that list. I've been answering people all day, and that's okay. I love it. I'd rather people be asking questions and engaging with us than not. But to answer your question, not necessarily in order of how good they were. But you know what? It's like I told some of the folks, hey, I'll play along. But Jalen Johnson, Mark, just so you'll know, is at the #1 spot. And there could be an argument for him being the top quarterback in the state. In South Georgia, and maybe even the state. But, of course, this list is for top quarterback talent in South Georgia.
Yes, so you said that is not in any particular order.
No, not really. And look, here's the thing. We're doing our top 10, rankings by position. Now, I stepped away from our normal rankings because, Mark, I saw just how good a group of quarterbacks we had assembled this year in South Georgia. Again, I talked about it earlier when we started the show. Most of the time, you've got the attention going to your top quarterbacks up at in Metro Atlanta, of course, and up in North Georgia. And you'll have 1 or 2 in South Georgia. But, Mark, this group that we've got this year, from Jace Johnson at Lowndes, We talked about the two quarterbacks at Brooks County. We got Cam Hill. Mark, there's some people calling Cam Hill, the quarterback at Thomasville, the best quarterback in the state. I've seen quite a few people mention that. Cohen Lawson, quarterback at Colquitt. So I'm just kind of going over some of the names that made our top 10 list. But all of those quarterbacks that I just mentioned are going to be playing on Saturdays when their high school career is over.
So for everybody listening, Phil, you are going to release a North Georgia list, and we're going to do that next week.
That's right. 100%.
Then we can have some fun debating that and maybe who is the best overall quarterback in Georgia. So I hadn't seen all of the quarterbacks play on that South Georgia list. I've had the opportunity to see Jace Johnson at Lowndes. I know he's a good-looking kid, has tons of talent. Had a chance to see the kid at Worth County. Very good quarterback, throws it around. You know, Coach Hammond at Worth County runs an offense, a high-powered offense. I think I was talking to him, and he mentioned that I think they had like a 3-game stretch they didn't punt. I mean, think about that for a minute. 3 games, and you do not punt.
That's Worth County?
Yeah.
That's almost unheard of.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, of course, and I'm familiar with Jalen Johnson at TCC. I hear a lot about the Tift County kid, but I have not had the opportunity to see him. Phil, what do you know about that guy?
So, Mark, talking about Damian Dixon, he'll be a junior. He impressed me. We covered the Colquitt County, Tift County game last year. It was our game of the week for that particular week. Colquitt and Tift, anytime they get together, it's going to be quite a matchup. Jeff Littleton has done a great job at Tift since taking over there, Mark. And we had a chance to do that game last year. That's the first time I'd had a chance to see Damian Dixon, Mark. And I want to tell you, Tift County lost the game, but Damian Dixon led Tift County's offense up and down the field. And I got to be honest with you, he's one of the best pure passing quarterbacks, Mark, I've seen in a long time at the high school level. So much poise in the pocket, lets his receivers, lets their routes develop. And those are just got a lot of the characteristics you don't see in a young quarterback. But Damian Dixon got all the tools. Dual threat quarterback, can run it if he needs to. But he also provides such a presence as a pocket passer. Very unique quarterback. I'm a Damian Dixon believer. And then, of course, I kept up with him the rest of the season, Mark, and he is the real deal. And just go to think, last year he was a sophomore. So he'll be a junior this year. And then by the time he's getting ready for his senior season, Mark, he's obviously going to be, have the skills refined, and he'll be leading Tift County, which I think will be very improved this year. And no telling, what they're going to be able to do next year.
Well, I know, Phil, you're a big advocate. You feel that these teams will go as their quarterback goes.
Yes, I do.
And based on that, it looks like then you're feeling Tift County is going to be a formidable opponent this year.
Mark, I do. I think they're going to be better than people are giving them credit for. One of the things, Mark, I like is they're in this Region 1-6A, which has got as much balance and parity than I've seen in a while. I just don't think, Colquitt's probably going to be the odds-on favorite. They're the defending region champion. Lowndes has got some question marks. Now, I think Adam Carter's going to do, and I don't want to get off too far off subject, but my point being that Region 1-6A has just it's so balanced that I think right now to try to predict the order of finish in Region 1-6A, it's really a crapshoot, Mark.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think normally, or there may be a couple of teams that could be clear-cut, but this year I do agree with you. There's a lot of parity there. I also don't think you can ever count Camden out. First-year head coach there. That community will rally around that team. So, yeah, I agree. I think Region 1-6A could be a coin toss.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Again, we want to welcome y'all's comments, whatever you think about our list, our top 10 South Georgia quarterbacks, not across the entire state. It is our top 10 South Georgia quarterback list. And again, I think it's the best group collectively that we've seen in South Georgia in some time. The very reason I thought it would be a good idea to rank them or to post the top 10. And boy, it's gotten a lot of comments, and we appreciate that.
So, Phil, I'm going to go ahead and just in thinking about next week, the North Georgia list. Will you be challenged in coming up with that list? Or are there 10 that you think are just clear cut? And I got to ask you the same for this list. When you were putting this list together, because I'm sure you've been getting comments, who did you leave off of this list? Based on the comments that you've gotten, people like, Phil, what are you doing? You left this person off. Who have you left off?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. And here's the thing about a top 10 list. Y'all was talking with Justin Kyle Haley about it today. Obviously, Justin Kyle Haley goes to a lot of football games. Justin knows his stuff, very knowledgeable about a lot of different programs. And, Justin was one of the one who kind of called me to task and said, look, I think you got the kid at, oh gosh, where's he? Well, you got Tate Snellgrove at Bellwood for one. And he was one that I had thought about, really strongly considered putting in the top 10 mark. Tate Snellgrove, got to remember, he was the Lowndes, former Lowndes.
Okay.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
And so, and look, here's another thing. Just because you're a quarterback at a private school, that should not exclude you from being considered one of the top quarterbacks. And it really had no bearing whatsoever in my thought process. And then you've got the young man at Deerfield Windsor. Somebody help me out with his name. Again, another private school quarterback. But now, let me clarify something. So I did get some flack for leaving off Stephen Cannon from Benedictine. However, Mark, we're going to have yet another regional top 10. So let me ask you, Mark. So yeah, I got you, Justin. Justin, was I right about him? Lane Skills, is he at Deerfield Windsor? Let me know about that while I'm asking Mark this. So when I was thinking about putting this top 10 list together for South Georgia quarterbacks, I was obviously thinking about Benedictine, but they're going to have to be in a region of their own. I mean, would you consider Savannah, Southern Georgia?
Well, my philosophy. I mean, I think once you get out of Atlanta, everything is South Georgia. Look, man, nobody in Middle Georgia you thought about? All those teams up in Middle Georgia? Or are you going to have another category, Phil?
Exactly.
You're going to go South Georgia, East Georgia. Wait a minute now. I think you're going to have to just pick 10 and roll with it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to because Stephen Cannon from Benedictine certainly deserves to be on the list. And again, I heard from Stephen today, and I reached out to him and said, look, Stephen, I certainly didn't forget about you, but he's a great quarterback, no doubt. But I just got to thinking, when I was putting this list together for the top quarterbacks in Southern Georgia, I guess I'm thinking more of the I-75 corridor, more like South Central Georgia.
Right.
I'd love to hear from our viewers too. Yeah, I'd love to hear from our viewers and tell me what you guys think about that. Because I mean, you could say South Georgia, man. That's a wide swath of geography and a large swath of the state.
It is that, but the population's so dense. If you say Atlanta and you go, 45-mile or 60-mile radius even, you're getting over in Gwinnett and Cobb and Cherokee and over to Carrollton and all the way down to McDonough. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of players in that area. So once you get south of McDonough, I don't know. I always will say South Georgia, but obviously, a lot of good quarterbacks in the state of Georgia, that's for sure. Because you have to make like 4 or 5 lists now, Phil. That means you have 40 or 50 on the list.
Now, look, and here's the thing about it. Again, kind of goes without saying, this state is loaded with really good quarterbacks. I tell you, obviously, I'm going to come up as part of our top 10 overall position rankings, Mark. So at some point, we're going to come up with the top 10 quarterbacks, period. And
right.
Boy, don't you know that's going to be quite a challenge.
That'll be a tough one. I'll let you handle that. The beauty of that is there's probably somebody out there that nobody knows about that, once this season gets moving, and we'll go like, well, hey, where did this person come from?
Justin Kyle Haley says, and look, he kind of puts it in perspective. Justin says there's 4 cardinal directions. I guess east, west, north, south. He says Benedictine is East Georgia. And that's kind of what I was thinking. Benedictine would be more of a coastal eastern Georgia. But anyway, let's talk about, again, this list real quick, just kind of finishing up some names. How about Brooks County, Mark, having 2 players on the list? I mentioned Junior Burris, of course, led Brooks County to a state championship appearance last year. And then you got Bryce Puckett. Josh McFarther is going to have some kind of decision to make there, trying to sort that out, Mark.
He is that. Phil, let me ask you this. You got those 10 quarterbacks. What teams on that list do you think have a legitimate shot at winning a state championship?
That's a good question. Thomas County Central and Jalen Johnson, Cam Hill at Thomasville, Brooks County, Lyndon Worthy at Worth County, and then I would say probably Jonathan Isom at Mitchell County.
Yes, that's fair enough. You don't give Cockwood and Lowndes. You never know. Maybe they could get on the roll. 6A is going to be very, very competitive. But that's fair enough. I probably put you on the spot a little bit there, but
no, that's okay. That's all right. I love it.
Yeah. Just curious.
Yeah, and what do you guys think? So Mark asked me that. I gave you what the teams that I thought. Joshua Chase Garnto says he thinks it's Brooks, TCC, and Lowndes. Of course, Joshua now is a big Lowndes fan. He's probably our number 1 Lowndes fan. I anoint somebody of our viewership, our regular viewers, that team's number 1 fan, right?
Well, Lowndes has probably got multiple number 1 fans. I mean, because listen, Lowndes has got the fans. I don't know that there's a better place or better home fan base than Lowndes High. There may be some equal, but I don't think there's any better. Let's just be real about that. The Concrete Palace and that home side is always packed. And does it get loud there? So I don't know. You may have to have a couple, 2 or 3 number 1 fans for Lowndes.
Yeah, you're right. Proportionally, we got so many people that support the program. Obviously, LG's got to be it there. Our buddy Larry Godwin's got to be
right.
there.
You can't forget LG.
Yeah, can't forget LG. Larry's our buddy. But Justin Kyle Haley says he didn't think any of these teams will win a state championship, truthfully.
Not even Brooks County?
Jeremy Jones says Jonathan Isom will be a top 10 athlete in Georgia this year. Yeah, I tell you, Mark, he's probably the guy that a lot of people, when I put this list out, probably said, who? But he is Mitchell County's quarterback. He's also, I believe, a 2-time state champion in track.
How about that? Incredible athlete, obviously.
Yeah, 100%. Donnie Jarvis says he thinks it's Brooks County, Thomas County Central, and Colquitt. Look, I think that, and obviously a lot of people probably wonder why I left Colquitt out. Nothing against Colquitt. I think Sean Calhoun is doing a great job at Colquitt. Mark, I just think it's going to be tough for anybody from South Georgia right now to win the state title out of 6A.
A lot of truth in that segment. I do think maybe a couple of the teams in South Georgia could make a run and get hot. Then the old adage, you only got to beat a team once, right? You're not going to have to beat them more than once. But I do agree there's some teams up in North Georgia that have so much depth. There's so many players up there. It will be difficult. Just looking at it, Grayson's going to have a very good opportunity to repeat. They are loaded. Buford is loaded. They're going to be very tough. Carrollton, I think, is going to be very good again. I know Everybody talked about Juju all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if Carrollton doesn't get back to a state championship. But just like right off the top of my head, those three teams will be very difficult to deal with.
Agree, 100%. You
And
know,
Collins Hill,
yeah.
I can't forget Collins Hill. I think Collins Hill will be. That's another team. They've got a few key players, and look at the high school level. A player like Deuce, I believe it's Deuce Gerald's, isn't it? Is that his?
That's
name?
him. Yeah. Right. Yep.
That kid is unbelievable. He can impact the game by himself. And Grayson's got some of those kids. So I wouldn't be surprised. I do think South Georgia team could make a run. I wouldn't be surprised if they make a run. I agree with you. I'll be surprised if they win it all.
Yeah, and again, look, we're obviously, followed Southern Georgia teams for most of our career. Obviously, we've become familiar with our North Georgia friends over the last decade. Well, more so probably the last 5 years. It's just really, I think you start to see the division of talent. Of course, you just talked about it. Colquitt County is a very good team. Lowndes is a very good team. I just don't know if they're going to be able to hang with the talent level of, like you mentioned, a Collins Hill, a Buford. But hey, funny, you know what? They said that about Jeff Herron's Camden County team, 2 years ago? And,
that's right.
They shocked the world when they defeated Mill Creek. Nobody giving them a chance in that game, Mark. So one thing about those teams in South Georgia, Mark, we just talked about, great coaches. And
well,
that
I'll
goes
tell you
a long
one thing
way.
that will make a difference: the home field.
Yes.
If the South Georgia teams can win the coin toss and play at home, all the South Georgia teams across all classifications have a big advantage of playing at home because these South Georgia fans come out to these games. And if you're talking about 6A, whether you have to go to the Hog Pen, you have to go to Death Valley, you have to go to Lowndes. It makes a difference. It makes a difference big time, that home field.
Yeah, it really does. Look, I said before, Mark, just go back to Jeff Herron for a second. I asked Jeff Herron, you remember we did the Jeff Herron coaches show when he was still at Camden. I asked Jeff Herron what was the hardest place he ever took a team into that he ever played, a road game at. And he did not hesitate, Mark. Jeff Herron said Colquitt County was the hardest. Yeah.
For sure.
Said, the sidelines are very narrow. You don't have much room between, the players and, of course, the wall where the stands begin. He said, the fans are right on top of you. And, of course, they have a lot of those sound effects that they play. The fans themselves are loud. Some of the best fans of anywhere in the state. So, Mark, there's a lot of different factors why the Hog Pen is one of the toughest places to play in the state.
It is. So they just need to win that coin toss, Phil. That's what needs to happen. Get in the dance and win the coin toss.
Absolutely.
So, Phil, and we may come back to the QBs, but there's something I thought I'd just throw out here today.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you're a sports fan, and if you didn't hear about it, but the Los Angeles Lakers got sold for $10 billion. That is a big number when you think about it. I never thought a professional basketball team would sell for that. The Washington Commanders sold for $6 billion, football-wise. And I think everyone had said, well, the Dallas Cowboys are the most valuable franchise in all of professional sports. So I don't know what their value would be now. So I got to thinking, okay, what is the most valuable high school football program in the state of Georgia? I feel like I know who number one is. I think there's all kind of factors that could go into number two. But if I were asking you, Phil, what team is the most valuable for entertainment purposes? Now we're just having
sure,
fun.
Right.
But what's the most valuable high school football team in the state of Georgia?
Well, before I answer that, let's kind of apply some criteria to it. Now, I would take into account, Mark, facilities, support, historical significance. You see what I'm saying here? I'm just trying to apply.
Yeah. Season ticket holders,
right.
Attendance. You look at all those things that add value to a team.
Because all those are assets, considered assets.
Correct. Yeah, considered assets. So, and obviously winning. The more you win, then the more you're going to be able to generate, quite frankly. The more value you'll be able to create. I personally say you'd probably have to put Buford at the top.
Yeah.
But I will be honest with you. After Buford, I feel like you really would have to look at these South Georgia teams when you think about the home field, the fans buying season tickets, the way they're supported in the community. And of course, yes, they win, but the consistency of these South Georgia teams. But I thought that was very interesting. Hey, what would be the most valuable? I agree. I think it would have to be Buford.
But Mark, you bring up a great point. The number 2 team, and I immediately go to a particular team for my number 2 pick.
Do you really?
100%. Who do you think it is?
That?
Lowndes,
yeah, okay. Yeah, I would say Lowndes, and they could make a point to be number 1. Again, part of that is I don't know the exact number of season ticket holders they have now, but I know in the past that number's approached 5,000. But look, let's face it, I think Lowndes probably has the most season ticket holders of any high school in the state of Georgia. I mean, Phil, would you say that's safe to say?
Yes, I would.
So when you factor in season ticket holders, facilities, they continue to upgrade the facilities at Lowndes. They have great facilities there. So they do check a lot of boxes. I think you look across town, and I think the thing where Valdosta is to get those season ticket holders back up. They have tradition there. They have the winning tradition. They're still the winningest high school football program in the country. I do think now, Phil, if I'm not correct, there's a few other teams now that are within a game or two because they had to forfeit all those games. So
right.
Look, I'm rooting for Valdosta, Georgia, or Valdosta High School to keep winning. We need them to hold on to that spot.
But I think it's Massillon, Mark. You went up there to Massillon, and I think they're in the single digits, Mark, behind Valdosta now.
Well, I can tell you one thing. That is a great little community. It's a very small. I mean, there's only 20,000 people in the town, and it's a very small community. But everybody rallies around that football team. I mean, even the surrounding counties attend and have season tickets to that. I mean, everybody's on board. And listen, they want it. They want that number 1 spot. They talk about it.
Yep.
They think about it. Look, I went to the game where Valdosta went up and played Massillon. Look, Valdosta should have won the game, but the quarterback got nicked up the second half and just wasn't the same. And people can say, well, yeah. But look, Valdosta was winning that game first half. They played very well, but Todd Robinson got his ankle banged up. And, I mean, just wasn't the same. And, again, as you always say, especially at high school level, if your quarterback goes out or is banged up, most likely, unless you're Brooks County this year, you just don't have somebody that can just readily come in and take his place.
That's right.
To be caught. But anyway, I do think that, I agree. Lowndes would probably be number 2. But I think that's an interesting thing to look at, especially where the world's going today, because I do think at some point NIL, the high school players are going to get paid.
Yep.
And it's going to be, okay, what high schools are high profile can leverage their brand, if you will, in which you see it now, to leverage the brand to raise money for the program so that you can feed the players, so you can have the best equipment that's out there, so you can have the best facilities. It all boils down to bringing in revenue, the ability to generate revenue.
I tell you, Mark, you really got me to thinking on this, and we're getting some interesting feedback from our our listeners. Well, I guess they are viewers and listeners, but so Mark threw it out. If you had to put a value on high school teams in the state, again, we're just having fun with it, guys. Don't get carried away, but you have to stop and think for a second. We're not just talking about the winningest football team. And Mark, I don't think that's what you had in mind when you approached this subject, right?
No, not the winning. No, you need to be able to you need to be a winning program.
Sure.
But I think a big factor is season ticket holders, facilities, all those kinds of things.
Yeah. So let me tell you, and again, because this has really got my wheels turning here, guys. Let us get your top 5. How about that? And we could probably talk about this for a few more minutes, but I'll tell you who comes in at number 3, Mark. I think you'll probably agree, and that's Gainesville.
Okay, yeah, getting out of 6A, Gainesville does check a lot of boxes. They have great supporters of that program. I'm sure their season ticket holder base, a lot of people turn out for those games. So, yeah, I agree. It's up there. And then I think Thomas County Central is another one with everything that's going on there. A lot of history in that program, a lot of championships that Coach Pilcher won there. Their facilities will be second to none once they finish up everything. I'll be honest with you. I think once you in Rome, we can't forget about.
They were the next list on my list. Yep.
So I think I think in Atlanta it's Buford. I think once you get away from, if you start throwing other teams in the mix, I think all the South Georgia teams, there's they check a lot of boxes. Gainesville and Rome, and I would say Carrollton, would have to be in that mix if you're thinking about the last 10 years. If you're talking about the last 20 years, 25 years, I really think it switches down to South Georgia.
You're right, Mark, and I would probably include Colquitt County. We got to remember now. Again, we're talking about value. Colquitt County built that. They were one of the first programs. We got to remember to build an indoor practice facility. They've had that thing forever, it seems like, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Again, Rush Probst did a lot there, whether you like him or don't like him.
Right.
He was certainly ahead of the game. I mean, he was feeding his teams, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, had them traveling on the nice buses, the away games, building an indoor, getting the facilities upgraded, doing a lot. But, yeah, I agree. I mean, again, I say South Georgia has more. We're talking about rankings. Are any of the 6A teams, and I'm saying 6A now, going to compete for a state championship? They'll certainly compete in terms of value. There's no question.
Well, the reason I thought about Colquitt, Mark, they built that indoor facility, if I'm not mistaken, with all private money. They didn't have to use any of the tax dollars. Is that right?
Well, I think they turfed their field with all private money. I do think they used some tax dollars for the
Okay, all right.
But either way, a lot of support for that team. And,
yeah,
here's another thing to throw out. And this is something we can look into, again, as we're just having fun. But hypothetically, say you're having a draft for high school football players. If you're a kid, very talented, where would you, if you could go play anywhere, where would you want to go play?
And we're talking about high school teams.
Yeah, high school. Yeah.
Well,
as a hypothetical, like if you were to, but hey, how a lot of times you'll have professional players. They talk about Green Bay a lot as a good place to play. You talk about Kansas City as a good place, a good team to play for. I mean, if you were saying, hey, I'd like to go play at X.
Well, let me throw this out. And I think this really puts what you're talking about in a perspective here. You got to remember, Mark, there were two young men from Milwaukee who transferred to Milton. No connection. They were not at the same team. They were not, coming from the same team. But they came from Milwaukee, and obviously, there was a reason that they wanted to go to Milton. And I believe firmly that, hey, that's the reputation that Milton has built, Mark. That Milton has built up that reputation that they are a top flight school. Great place to live. Here's another thing you got to take into consideration. Great area that you're moving into. I lived up there for 10 years, in Forsyth County. It's a great place, great schools, and there's a lot of positives up there. So that's something. That's just something to take into consideration. When you look at two kids coming from Milwaukee, otherwise no connection, that both desired to go to Milton High School.
I got to be totally honest. Well, first of all, Milton, Coach Reed's done a great job, and they've created a great program. Again, I think if you're considering like over a 20-year period, I don't know that Milton is in that conversation. That said, if you're thinking about the last, 3, 4, 5 years, Milton's in that conversation. If I'm in Milwaukee, how do you hear about Milton? I know they're nationally ranked. So to me, I feel like there's got to be some tie somewhere for those kids. So do you understand it as they just randomly said, or not randomly, they looked at national rankings or whatever and said, hey, I want to go to Milton.
Yeah, they were not from the same school. One's a running back, one's a quarterback. Now, it is worth pointing out, by the way, Michael Baxter, speaking of Milton, says, go Milton Eagles. So we got Michael Baxter checking us out on the show today. Mike, thanks so much for being a part of the show. And Michael, maybe you can chime in here, but, no, there was no connection, Mark. It was two young men from Wisconsin. I know the Braylon Albritton young man. Remember, he announced on Christmas Day that he was going to be transferring to Milton, Milwaukee Academy of Science. Top-notch quarterback. And then almost to the day, 1 month later, you had Derek Baker. Now, I'm sorry, this was just a quarterback situation. So hold on a second. But you had another young man from Milwaukee who was a running back. His name escapes me. But anyway, two players from Milwaukee. No connection. And I think it was just purely coincidence, Mark.
Well, do we think by chance one of their parents got a job offer in the great Atlanta area? Was there something? And then they said, hey, we want to play at Milton, so let's make sure we live in this particular area or whatever. Are we saying that, look, they just moved just for football? You got to think about that. I mean, you're going to move just for football. You got to make a living. You got to get by. I mean, I guess that's a big difference in that if your parent is getting transferred to the great Atlanta area and then you got to pick out a school in that area, or is it, look, I could have gone anywhere in the good old US of A. I chose Milton.
Well, again, I would have to say, first of all, I think Florida probably is not as desirable as it used to be because, again, going with the transfer situation, it's just gotten crazy and out of hand. And, Mark, I think the word is spread about Florida, and just how crazy it is. Of course, I guess California would be obviously another very desirable place to live. But, California's got some issues other than just high school football. And I don't know. It's a lot. Plus, you got that's a long way to travel, especially if you're on the East Coast. Yeah. So I just to answer your question, Mark, I just think that the Atlanta metro area, Milton, I think it just checks a lot of the boxes as a desirable place to live. And then the high school football team happens to be pretty darn good as well. Got to remember they were a top 5 nationally ranked team too, Mark.
Yeah, no, I agree. And of course, here's the thing: the cost of living in Milton is through the roof. I mean, it's the probably highest cost of living in the state of Georgia.
Yep.
I would not be surprised. So, I mean, to me, I got to feel. I mean, look, just me. I think there's some reasoning behind those kids coming there. That's what I would think.
I got you.
I'm sitting in Milwaukee. Am I moving my family to Milton, Georgia? Are these kids seniors? Do you know what year they are? Junior, seniors?
So the running back is a senior, and I think Albert. Yeah, you know what? They are both seniors. They are. They sure are.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a lot transferring that far to play 1 year high school football. But again, that's where we live in today.
Well, so now let me just throw this out. Okay, just trying to play a little devil's advocate here. So you had Luke Nickel graduating. Again, one of the top quarterbacks in the country. And I'll still believe firmly to this day, Mark, he may be the best high school quarterback I've ever seen in my life.
Well, he was a good one. You know my feelings. I thought he was by far the best quarterback in Georgia.
Yeah.
And one of the top quarterbacks in the country. No question.
Correct. Now,
but he's from that area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Luke Nickel is, yes.
Yeah.
So, but my point being that with Milton being a nationally ranked team, Luke Nickel being one of the top nationally ranked quarterbacks, the word spread, hey, Luke Nickel is leaving. Milton does not have a bona fide number 2 quarterback. In other words, the quarterback position was wide open. And I just think that the Albritton family saw that and said, hey, transfer him to Milton. Let's see if we can go in and get a – and the young man had some really good numbers for his junior season up there in Milwaukee. And so anyway, I think that was the reason. And I think Derek Baker, look, from St. Thomas Aquinas, he was not going to be the starting quarterback. So that's the reason he left. Roger Harriet's program. I mean, of course, you and I know Roger Harriet at the St. Thomas. He's going to tell it like it is, Mark, and I think that's what he told the young man.
Yeah,
that he wasn't going to start. Yeah,
first class people at St. Thomas Aquinas. So
100%.
But how does that work out? Now it turns out, I think, Phil, you just put out that Milton's named their starter, and it's the kid from St. Thomas Aquinas. So the people coming from Milwaukee, you got tough. 1 year left, right?
Yep, that's tough. Yep.
Yeah, that's really tough because what you need is that year of tape more than let me go be on a nationally ranked team. Again, all I know is moving to Milton's very expensive. It costs a lot to live there. I know that. So a lot of things going on there. But anyway, this will be fun, Phil. We need to pick back up on this next week, maybe a little bit. We do a little research about what team we think is the most valuable and how that plays out, which, obviously,
I just got to kick it. It's a lot of fun talking about stuff like that. I'm just sitting here thinking what really got my wheels to turning, about, the most valuable team. And you know what, guys, let's put it out here, Mark. So next week, let's think about, the draft, just again, a mock draft, having fun with it. Who would be the top 10 draft picks?
Okay. Top 10 draft picks. Talking about that next week.
Yeah.
And it could be, as long as you're in high school. Doesn't matter if you're junior, freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior.
That's right. So, guys, I want to continue to encourage y'all to take a look. Just because this show is only once a week, we've got content going out every day at all of our platforms. Be sure to like and share our content, guys. That helps us a lot, and we would appreciate that. And continue to keep an eye on our top 10 position rankings again, this top 10 South Georgia quarterback ranking was kind of an aside. But as far as the top 10 position rankings, we're going to be putting those out every week, and obviously going to be generating a lot of conversation about who the top 10 players are. Because I tell you, it's like I've been saying, the top 10 players, to try to rank the top 10 players is a tough deal. But I'm up for it, Mark. I'm up for it.
Phil, you're going to come back next week with the top 10 from North Georgia. Now Phil's going to have East Georgia and West Georgia, and then it may be Middle Georgia and South Central. And next thing you know, Phil got 80 quarterbacks ranked.
Oh, you're killing me.
You're
killing me. I love it. All right.
Listen, man,
high school football.
I enjoyed it, and I'll be back next week.
All right, Mark. Thanks so much for joining us.
All right, great, man.
All right, guys. Thank y'all for joining us as well. We'll see y'all next Monday, coming to you live from the Mellow Mushroom here in Valdosta, 5:30 to whenever we get through